Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Monday evening murder podcast. I am Fey Fire, aka Erin, and I am here to discuss with you all House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 4, titled The Red Dragon and the Gold. And this was a crazy episode. Oh my gosh, there was so much going on. There were just crazy revelations, death and dismemberment and just crazy stuff going on. So we have a lot to discuss today. It's been kind of a crazy time, crazy day for me. So I apologize I was not here this morning despite my best efforts. It's just been a little chaotic around here. We've got family in town and extra kids and just whatever. And, obviously House of the Dragon is the most important thing here. So, we got to make this happen. I know, thank you to everyone who's here watching in the chat and being here at the live. I'm so sad too, Krim. Thank you for being here. Your favorite character, yes. It was a very tragic episode. We had a loss of one of our dearest and most powerful characters in the entire series, but particularly to Team Black. And that was Rhaenys Targaryen, and that was super tragic. I have a lot of thoughts about that whole thing because she was a very determined woman in that moment. There was she kept going back for more. So there's a lot to discuss about her death and just everything else that happened in this episode. So everyone who's here in the chat, we've got Wild Marjoram, we've got Mrs. Duncan the Tall, we've got Krim and Yasi Sufi, and Carl Karsnark just showed up. Hey, friends. So thank you all for being here, and be sure to drop your thoughts, your questions, and all of that in the chat, and we will get into discussing this. And Mandy might show up later. She's I guess there's a hurricane going on in Texas, so I don't know. She's not answering her phone, so hopefully everything is okay. I'm sure it is. But she did warn me that she might lose service, so she might be here, but she might not, and that's okay. We're gonna persevere as best as we can. I'm not exactly an evening person, but we're just doing this. So, at first, I thought this episode was going to be called Rook's Rest. That's what it's been listed on IMDb for a couple months now. They didn't put out all of the episode titles, but episode 4 has always been known to be Rook's Rest. And then they kind of changed it at the last minute to The Red Dragon and the Gold. And which I love the title change. I am all about these powerful dragon titles that we have going on. They're very mythical, I guess you might say, mythological, just kind of tying into these deep threads. And, the red dragon, the gold dragon, colored dragons is very relevant to just dragon mythology in general and sort of their energy that they carry. But one of the interesting things I did catch about this while I was kind of studying just getting my notes done and everything, was the definition of the word rook. It has actually a lot of meaning behind it. There's many definitions behind the word. So I just thought that they all were somewhat relevant to this actual battle and this episode and sort of the subterfuge that's going on. And so let me just share with you guys. So Rook, the first one as a noun, a common old world gregarious crow, Corvus frugilegus, that nests and roosts in okay, one more time. Let me do this again. Okay. A common old world gregarious crow, Corvus frugilegus, that nests and roosts in usually treetop colonies. Okay. We'll come back to that. Yeah. Okay, second definition, to defraud by cheating or swindling. Amen. Okay, third definition, either of two pieces of each color in a set of chessmen having the power to move along the ranks or files across any number of unoccupied squares. very much like the war strategy that's going on. And then the final meaning behind it is called also castle. So like we have these many definitions behind the word rook, which is, at the kind of core of this entire episode. And I just thought that was really interesting, especially the first one that I already read twice, but a common old world gregarious crow that nests and roosts in usually treetop colonies. Okay, so when we think about Alys Rivers and everything that's going on in Harrenhal, I just thought that was really relevant. Number one, crow, because that's kind of a relevant animal in George R. R. Martin's world as it is, whether it be a Night's Watchman or like the ravens that are relevant to the children of the forest. But also then we have Alys Rivers kind of throwing things in the mix where she calls herself an owl. I'm a barn owl. And I just love that. You guys, this show has officially, for me, become the Alys Rivers, House of the Alys Rivers, okay? House of Harrenhal, like, who's with me? Because I'm wearing my Alys Rivers weirwood, whatever, with frilly sleeves, okay? This is like my powerful robe. So, anyway, so, and then, besides that, besides that, Rook meaning to defraud or by cheating or swindling, that's definitely Aemond in this episode. He has alternate plans to whatever is going on, whatever the council is deciding. And then he's really making his own shots, calling his own shots when he's out there on the battlefield because he can. It's like when you have the most powerful weapon, then you're kind of able to, flaunt it, right? So I just really loved that. I just thought it was very interesting. And even though they changed the title of the episode, I still think all of those things are relevant. So worth bringing it all up. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. Basically, we're going to kind of split it into three sections. We have the Crownlands, we have Harrenhal, and then we have what's happening. Well, we have Dragonstone, and then we have Rook's Rest. So maybe 4 sections. So let's kind of go, we'll just kind of go around through all of it, really. Okay, so let's start with the Crownlands. So the Greens receive word that Daemon has taken Harrenhal, and Aegon is like, how have we let this happen? Larys Strong is the Lord of Harrenhal, and he is he basically just gave him the job, hired him as Master of Whispers in the last episode. So he's pretty furious as to how this could happen, but Larys reminds him that this is the castle is more crippled than he is. And that's a really interesting idea because Daemon has said that he wants to fix up Harrenhal. He wants to get it going. And if you guys have seen the trailer for next week's episode, it shows him actually doing a lot of work. And I really love that. I love where that's going to be going. Obviously very Arthurian, but we'll get into that later. But I think it's really interesting that Larys, he's not concerned with Daemon having taken the castle. And granted, and even Simon Strong kind of voices this to Daemon. He's like, you don't have an army here. You can't get one quickly enough based on like the reports we're getting for the Greens who are headed this way. So yeah, it's interesting. But Aemond is, in the small council, we have this moment where he starts speaking Valyrian to Aegon, just kind of trying to, basically, he's still very angry about what happened in the last episode where Aegon interrupted him, caught him at the brothel with his favorite, madame there, and he is still feeling very betrayed, embarrassed, and he's stewing over this humiliation. So he kind of throws it a little bit back in Aegon's face where he's speaking Valyrian very fluently, which we know that Aemond is definitely the more studious of the two brothers. And Aegon can't speak Valyrian. I mean, he does a terrible job. He just, that was shameful, really. And I was thinking back to like episode 6, in season 1 where they're at the dragon pit and Aegon is just goofing around. He's yawning while the other boys are, interacting with their dragons. Like, he is just not a serious person. He never has been. And we see this in action in this moment in this small council meeting where Aemond is really like rubbing it in his face, showing that he is the more intelligent of the two. And you have to wonder, like, who on the council, is it only the Targaryen family or the royals who are learning Valyrian? Obviously the dragon tamers, they speak Valyrian. And I believe they come from Essos as well. But it's kind of interesting if any of those people, especially like Grand Maester Orwyle sitting there, does he speak Valyrian? Does he know? I guess I could have checked his chain if he has his, like, do they have, the Valyrian steel chain is for magic, right, guys? Remind me. I think it's like their magical studies or whatever, but I don't know. I would imagine they probably know Valyrian. It's like if you were like a maester in real life, you'd probably speak Latin. I don't know. I need coffee. Okay. All right. So that's kind of an awkward moment. Aegon really wants to be useful, and he is the last person in on the joke. This is like what Otto has said, like the last person to figure this thing out was Viserys. Well, the last person to figure out that like Viserys was sort of a puppet king is Aegon. And that's because he's had his head sort of, he's just been doing whatever he wants for his entire life, just being sort of a privileged prince. Obviously, he does whatever he wants. He never realized that his father actually was not ruling. And I think this, he's probably, a lot of pieces are starting to fall into place, especially after that conversation with Alicent. Alicent basically, Aegon expresses to her, he's like, what am I supposed to do to like be useful? None of them respect me. None of them take me seriously. None of them fear me. And Alicent is essentially like, yeah, well, don't do anything. Do nothing. You are meant, like, we just need you to be the puppet. And what's great about this scene is that those kind of deep suspicions about the Greens and about Otto and about, what they've been up to all those time, because we did have the big time jump where Rhaenyra and Daemon were on Dragonstone for many years. And then Viserys was getting more and more ill in King's Landing, and the Greens were sort of serving as queen. But they were like, no, like we serve at the behest of Viserys. He's just too ill, kind of thing. But then it turns out that actually, no, the worst fears, the worst suspicions of them just using Viserys's name and using his title to rule through him was actually the truth. So it is interesting how that has to make Aegon feel. Obviously, he decided to get super drunk. He's not very good at like regulating his emotions and feelings. And he got really drunk and decided to take his dragon out to try and prove himself. So that's, yeah, it's pretty bad. And I do have to wonder, like, what's going through his mind at this time? Like, what does he really believe? Like, does he think that he's going to be the next Aegon the Conqueror? Like, does he really want to prove himself and step up in that moment before the sort of devastation happens? Like, obviously he's drunk, but I don't know. It's just, Tom Glencarney does such an excellent job at playing Aegon, making him this really rich character. And he's an incredible actor as it is. And so I don't hate the Greens that much. They're a hot mess. They're so messy. They're so messy. And it's really enjoyable to watch. And going back to Alicent, things got even messier for her in this episode. She's pregnant by Kristen Cole. What? That's insane. Okay. So let me tell you guys my thoughts on this, okay? Now, granted, she did get the moon tea. All right, she got the moon tea. She drank the moon tea. Larry Strong saw the moon tea, the token moon tea cup. Now, here's my thoughts. We didn't get Maelor in this series. which is interesting. Maelor is in the books Helena's third child. He is her youngest baby. And I just like had this thought about Alicent being pregnant. Like, what if Maelor was actually Alicent's child? And I know this okay, before you just say that's insane, that's stupid, because it is a little stupid. But just bear with me here. What if they try to like paint it as, oh, this is Helena's child? Like, they don't want to admit that this Alicent's illegitimate child is actually hers by the Kingsguard, right? So what if they cover it up and they say, oh, Helena had a baby, that kind of thing. I'm just saying, it's just an idea I kind of had in passing. I was like, because they haven't included Maelor in the series, there's still opportunity for it. And obviously Maelor's story is super tragic, but I just think it would be really interesting. There's even the idea that, Kristen could have been the father of Darren. And I actually really like that theory, just because the way that Daemon is painted in the books is he's so like gallant and brave, and he's called Daemon the Daring. Like, he's just like this super he's the most beloved of Alicent's sons and this kind of thing. And he was raised in Old Town, so he's just kind of set apart from the drama and the craziness of the rest of the High Towers. And so I did like the idea that he was sort of like the hidden away illegitimate child of Alicent and Kristen, if their relationship had been going on for a long time, but it actually hasn't. The actors have come out and said that it is a new development in their relationship. But Maelor could potentially play into that idea, is all I'm saying. They could do that with Maelor. And then perhaps the histories don't record it as, oh, the Queen Regent had an illegitimate child with the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and the King's Hand. Like, that's not a good look for the Greens whatsoever. But if they painted it as such, because clearly they are doing that, they're painting history. And we even see that in the trailer for next week. They are saying that it was Aegon and Sunfire who defeated Meleys. They're not giving Vhagar the credit for that. So the Greens are willing to play like this big PR game to make themselves look amazing and fantastic and all of this stuff. So I'm just saying, it could be Maelor. Maelor could be Alicent's child instead. And they just say, oh, this was Helena's child. She had another son by the king, or what have you. Just saying. Just hear me out. Just let me know what you guys think. Okay. All right. Let me catch up in the chat with you guys. Let's see who's here. Anyone new? Thank you guys. If you are here watching live, I appreciate it. Okay, House of the Barn Owls, exactly. That's where we are. Dragon's Nest in rocky outcroppings. Rook's rest in a rookery, so to speak. Exactly. Yes, indeed, Carl. So owls, nocturnal, predatory, silent, smart, wise, Athena, Minerva, etc. Yes, and we will get into the etc. Actually, let me pull up that note right now so I'm not having to. Where are you, Link? We've got a couple. So Daemon's dreams were very full of mythological threads, so to speak, back to Celtic mythology. And okay. Sorry if that was freezing at all. And in season 1, I talked about this many times in many of my videos, that there are so many connections to Arthurian legend and Arthurian lore and sort of old Celtic mythology within throughout season 1 in particular, and especially when in episode 3, like with Rhaenyra, when she kills the boar and when she sees the white stag, those are definitely interwoven into Arthurian lore. And let me see. And so we got that again in season 2. We get that with definitely in episode 3, but again in episode 4, and throughout Daemon's dreams, we're seeing a lot of those things coming back again. So in this episode, he has basically 3 dreams, and we're going to talk about all of them. Let me make sure I didn't skip anything before we get ahead of ourselves. I think that's about it. We'll save the rest for Rook's Rest. So let's just talk about Harrenhal. Okay. Because that's really all I want to talk about. I mean, let's be real. This is where my heart lies right now. Okay. So, Harrenhal. Daemon is having weird dreams. He is seeing strange things. He has a dream of Rhaenyra. And, sorry if you guys can hear my neighbor's dog barking. I'm so sorry. So he has a dream of Rhaenyra on the throne, and she's speaking to him in kind of this distant, garbled voice, like sort of very dream-like. If you have a dream, you can never, like, sometimes you can't really understand what someone is saying, so it sounds kind of garbled. And you know what? One more time. I had what she said written out, but you know what? I'm not going to open a bunch of tabs. Okay. But basically she is, no, actually I will open it. Okay. Give me one more second. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a little unorganized, but I want to make sure I have all the info for you. I know I bookmarked this one. Okay. In my eyes, you were a god, Daemon Targaryen. I was an innocent. You exploited me and abandoned me. You sullied my name at court. You empowered my rivals. You tried to make my ruin. You put me on that throne, and you love me and you hate me for it. And I think she says, you know, that you hate me because my father loved me or something like that. So interesting. He is carrying around all this resentment for Rhaenyra, kind of taking his crown as he sees it, and he still refers to it as his brother's throne, as we saw. So he's really carrying around this sort of core wounding that he doesn't know how to resolve, obviously. And what I love is these dreams are really kind of like a mushroom or like an ayahuasca situation where you're really tapping into like your core wounding and healing that, or examining it for what it is. And then you get to choose like how you resolve that wound, right? Very psychological sort of. Yeah. And Daemon is so interesting because he's not a spiritual man. You know, we talked about this last week, is he's not a spiritual man, even though he rides a dragon, which really sets him apart. Obviously, the Targaryens are closer to gods than normal men, but Daemon is not spiritual. So it's a very interesting irony with him, because he needs something to kind of awaken that within him. And obviously, Alys is able to tap into or whatever the power of Harrenhal, whatever if he's being drugged or whatever is sort of tapping into him, the power in those stones is tapping into that core wounding. So reminding him, like, are we going to heal from this, or are you going to just kind of keep running, as Alys called him out for? And let's be real, Alys is like the funniest person. She calls Daemon out like, just she reads him like no business. She's like, oh, you came here after you're fighting with your wife. I loved that. And he's just like, what but anyhow, so okay, so in his dream, sorry, we're gonna go back to it. So he sees Rhaenyra, she's saying all these things, and he decides to cut her head off. And that's a really interesting reaction. But the head keeps speaking to her. And now I don't know if you guys have seen the movie called The Green Knight, but if you've watched my Alys Rivers video, then you've probably seen some of it. but in that movie also they do a reference to a woman called Saint Winifred, and Saint Winifred, she is also, she's a Welsh virgin martyr from the 7th century. So she and a lot of times in old like Celtic or even like old in Britain, the springs, the sacred springs, sacred wells, and those kind of things are often associated with saints or goddesses, you know, like the Lady of the Lake and that kind of thing in particular. But so Saint Winifred, she is associated with a particular spring. But what happens, she is featured in The Green Knight. She has her head cut off. And so she wants Gawain to basically get her head back for her so that like she can, her soul can go to rest, right? So Saint Winifred was a virgin martyr saint who was beheaded by her betrothed when she chose to become a nun. And then her uncle was the one who actually got the head, returned her head to her, and restored her. And so the spring where she was supposedly where her head, basically when she had her head cut off, a spring came up in that spot. And so she is like the guardian of that spring, or like the patron saint of it, right? Does that make sense? So anyhow, so Rhaenyra is kind of a nod to that myth because we have so much of this Arthurian lore that's going on at Harrenhal. So that's just like a mild one. Obviously, there's a lot. But then we go on to, let's look at his next dream, where he sees himself, well, he sees Aemond, and it's very strange. He wakes up and he kind of sees footsteps going past the door, and he decides to go follow them, and he sees Aemond, and it's very strange. Like even the walk was pretty similar, but you know what's kind of funny, what I was noticing is you could tell it was Daemon, but I don't know, it was just interesting. The two of them, they look so much alike. But yeah, so he's following him. He's got Dark Sister with him. And then finally, Aemond turns around and it's actually Daemon himself, his sort of in his younger years. And he has the eye patch on. And this is so interesting. And we've talked about this before, and I am in the midst of working on the video about the Egyptian mythology, an eye for an eye, a sun for a sun. But what that really taps into is the idea of the kingship that is attached to the eye. Okay, so the eye is a symbol of power, and in some Egyptian mythology, in particular, the myth of the falcon god Horus and the god of the desert, Set, his uncle, and they fight, and Set takes out one of Horus's eyes, and it's kind of this whole thing. I'm making a video about it, so I don't want to spoil too much of the myth, but the power of the eye is connected to kingship. And so when Aemond, he lost an eye, but he gained a dragon, but he lost his right to kingship when he lost an eye because he is no longer whole. And so when we see with Daemon, when he has that dream and he sees Aemond, and then he turns around and it's him, and he's the one that has the eye patch on, we really see this idea come to life, because now we see like Daemon's core wounding in this whole thing is that he lost his right to kingship. He lost his right to the heir to the throne, to be Viserys' heir. And Rhaenyra is the one who took that role. So when he sees Aemond, or he sees himself and he's lost his eye, it's the exact equivalent of that. It's exactly that myth being spelled out for us, that the eye is connected to the right to kingship. So beautiful poetic symmetry right there. Is that making sense, or am I just like off on a crazy tangent in my mythology brain? I don't know. Could be either. Yes. So exactly, Carl. So the eye of Horus is the left eye. The eye of Ra is the right eye. And in the books, Aemond loses his right eye, but they changed it in the show to his left eye because they are using this myth so heavily in it, as like kind of a core like way of doing it. And if you even look at like the Egyptian hieroglyphs of Horus and of Set, they look exactly like how they've stylized Aemond and Daemon. Because, well, I'll pull it up here. Why not? I'll just show you guys. Come on, my computer's being slow. We have a lot of people on the internet right now at my house. There's a lot of people here. Okay, come on. Where are you guys? Okay. So this is Horus. Okay, hold on. You might be like, what are you talking about, woman? Just look at this, okay? Think about, this is Aemon's head. What am I saying? Am I crazy? No, this is Aemon's head, okay? Think about the way he styles his hair, his eye. He has sort of this like very long sort of face, okay? Now, whoops, wrong way. No, never mind. Hold on. Come back here. Okay, this is Set. Now look at the way that this is like Daemon. He wears his little like half ponytail. He's got sort of like this kind of doggish face. And not only that, Set has what's called the Set animal, which is this like weird animal that's like hasn't been traced to any like particular real animal, right? And that I can equate to Caraxes, because they talk about Caraxes being like kind of a mutated dragon, and the way he has sort of that weird roar that he does that's just not like the other dragons. So I equate that to like the dragon version of the Set animal. I don't know, guys. Is that just me? Am I just on a tangent? I don't know. But anyways, let's get back to this. So yes, okay. So the leftness is associated with magic, the left-hand path, and evil. Yeah, exactly. So, and the Eye of Ra is equated with the sun, with you know, heat and light and like the source of inspiration, whereas the Eye of Horus, or the left eye, is associated with the moon and with nighttime and with healing and prophecy. And Aemond, we see him really more in his power. Even when he claimed Vhagar, that was at night, you know, under the full moon, versus Daemon, who is very often seen like in the sun, in the light. And, you know, he is like a sort of desert, like he's very connected to his Valyrian ancestry in Essos, which is, you know, the desert, right? The sort of ruins or whatever. Whereas Horus is like more with society, with the Black Lands, as they call them, which are the fertile lands that are near the Nile River. So here we are with my nerdiness. But that video should be out to you guys in the next couple days. I have it about halfway done. So I'm sorry I'm not working as diligently as normal, but just been busy over here. So, yep, exactly. Moon versus sun, exactly, are luminaries. So, exactly. Set is the setting sun, Horus is the rising sun and dawn. Yes. All right. So, that aside, so that's two of the dreams. And then he also saw this dream of Laena as a serving woman. And that was really interesting. Because obviously he's haunted by her. And, you know, his relationship with Laena is complicated in the show. We didn't get to see a lot of it, and that's kind of a shame, because in the books, it's such a huge part of it. And they took that away to give Alicent and Rhaenyra more of a storyline and more of a complicated relationship between the two of them. But in the books, Laena and Rhaenyra are very close. They fly together. Like Daemon and Laena live on Driftmark. Rhaenyra lives on Dragonstone. They hang out all the time. Laenor is doing like his like normal gay stuff, and the three of them are like three heads of the dragon together. They fly around. Syrax was laying tons of eggs. Vhagar was not. Syrax was. And Laena and Rhaenyra were like super close, like very, very close. In fact, fond and more than fond is how it is written. So, but Daemon is in the series, they've made it seem as though he's sort of constantly brooded upon not being able to marry Rhaenyra. Maybe that's the one that got away kind of thing, which that's not really how it's written in the book. So, and I mean, it's like Laena is like so dang beautiful. How could you not be just head over heels for her? So it's interesting how they've kind of made this complication for them. But obviously Daemon carries a lot of guilt about her and about their relationship and about her death. And it's something that he's dwelling on and reflecting on. He didn't spend a lot of time mourning her before he kind of turned around and married Rhaenyra. And then Baela ended up staying on Driftmark while Rhaena came with them to Dragonstone. But it was just like a very big breakup of their family. A baby had died. You know, it was sad. It was rough. And maybe he just kind of ignored that and just went to go be with Rhaenyra and sort of play the hero, because she kind of played upon that for him, where she was like, I need you, uncle. And it gave him a distraction from the pain and mourning process. So that may be why he's, being haunted by her. All right. Exactly. Daemon was 1,000% in love with Laena, never cheated on her. I mean, like, maybe him and Laena and Rhaenyra were like, together, but I don't see him cheating on her, or, I don't know. He was very much in love with her is how it's written. So it is kind of interesting to see that change in the show, because Daemon doesn't have a lot of positivities written about him in history, but that was one of the things that was positive, was that he and Laena actually did have a really strong marriage and they loved each other a lot. So it's kind of interesting. Okay. So, sorry, I'm just catching up here on notes. Daemon cares about his family and Targaryen legacy in his own way and is starting to realize they're dropping like flies. He literally sees himself in their deaths. Interesting. Interesting point. All right. So, all right. So let me close up St. Winifred. And so Daemon he's stumbling around. He has the dream of Aemond, or Daemon, as I call it, the combination of the two of them. And he stumbles into Alys Rivers, like, lair or whatever, her, like, I don't know, her little whatever, her little mixing hall, I don't know. And it's interesting. So she says that she's kind of serving as maester since the other maester ran off into the night. So obviously, something spooked him. Maybe it was Alys herself, who knows? But she has her own healing capabilities. She is a healer. She's a wet nurse. She is said to have nursed many babies, like all the babies at Harrenhal, including potentially Larys and Harwin. And Some even say maybe even Lionel, because it's unclear as to her age. So she's sort of this ageless, mysterious witch character. And Daemon doesn't know what to think about her. I think he likes her. I don't think, she shows no fear to him. And going back to episode 3, when Daemon came to Harrenhal, he says, I'm claiming Harrenhal, and Sir Simon bends the knee to him, and the other, vassals, his nephews or sons or whoever they are, they all bend the knee, but in waltzes Alys, and she doesn't bend the knee. And so she's just a powerful individual. She doesn't fear Daemon Targaryen, which is something very different than what he is used to. She's very much in her own element at Harrenhal. Obviously, this is her home. And he is like, you're a strange kind of woman. It's what he says to her. As she is mixing what clearly seems to be weirwood paste. Thoughts? I rewound it. I rewatched that. I do have a screenshot of it. Here, let's pull it up real quick, just so you guys can give me your thoughts. But, because I was like, is it meat? Is it berries? Like, what is this? And then it dawned on me, oh, it's got to be weirwood paste. It's red. It's kind of gory looking. It's a little sappy, and she's licking it off of her fingers like it's, tasty. And I love this because it does look a little bit meat-ish. And then there's the idea that weirwood paste, like if going back to A Dance with Dragons, Bran eats what the fandom lovingly has coined Jojen paste. Okay. So it is weirwood paste that sort of opens his third eye, and he is able to green dream and really connect with the weirwood. He's wed to the weirwoods when he eats this paste. Okay. Wed to the weirwoods. And even George R.R. Martin has used that terminology. So, it's pretty interesting. Like, she gives him the weirwood paste, and she says, you're going to need this if you want to win this place to your side. And she's also telling the story of Black Heron, who felled a grove of weirwood trees to build Harrenhal. And she says that the spirits of spirits are imbued into the old trees. Here, I have the exact wording because I was taking a bunch of screenshots. Because I'm a nerd for Alys. Let's see. Harrenhal has been cursed since its first stone was laid. So heart trees imbued with the spirits of those who lived long before he came. And it is written that those were 3,000-year-old weirwood trees. So these are ancient, like, spirits, ancient children of the forest, because the children of the forest believe that when they die, their spirits go into the weirwood trees, and they become part of that godhood. They view the weirwood trees as their gods. So there is this idea, it's very druidic, the weirwood paste, the Jojen paste in general, like, is this a cannibalistic substance somehow mixed with the weirwood sap or a sacrifice or something of that nature? And in mythology, of course, and my Yellow Jackets people, you guys are going to get this, but it is a mythological, cultural sort of trope, I guess you might say, that cannibalism can awaken your third eye, your sort of inherent gifts, and your gifts of sight, so, and we see that with Bran when he eats the Jojen paste. Okay, so if we're seeing this as, being wed to the weirwoods, this is Daemon. He drank the weirwood paste, he drank the Jojen paste, so he's now wed to the weirwoods. First come, first serve. Okay, he got there first, and now he's husband. Okay. I don't know what I'm saying. Actually, I know exactly what I'm saying. And if you guys have watched my Alys Rivers video, then you will understand. But this is very much according to plan. Like, Daemon we'll get in. Okay, I'm going to say a few little spoilers. So, but later in the story, like Daemon's body is never found. Okay. When he dies, his body is never found. And so there is the idea that he may have made it to the Isle of Faces, and that, whatever happens with the green men, which I believe is a process of reincarnation. It's the life, death, rebirth cycle. And if their spirits are stored in the heart trees, in the weirwood trees, Daemon is in essence the once and future king, just as King Arthur was, right? And that's why there's so many of these parallels with this, okay? So the story of King Arthur is that, he was killed in his final battle at Camlin, and then his body is taken away to the sacred island, the sacred Isle of Avalon, by his sister, Morgan Le Fay, who is a priestess, the Lady of the Lake in title, okay? And so she takes King Arthur's body to the Isle of Avalon, where she keeps him there. She has healed him, or whatever she has done, and until it is time, until Britain's greatest need, then Arthur is said to return, and that is his prophecy, right? So he is in essence, his spirit is imbued in a weirwood tree, all right? So Daemon is George Martin's King Arthur in all sense of the word, in all sense of the title, right? So that's why he is valuable to Alys Rivers. And this is something they're kind of developing their own personal relationship that is going to pay off in the end, is, my ultimate hope. But when we think about the prince that was promised prophecy, that there has to be a Targaryen on the throne, when we think about certain Targaryens who have said things like, the Iron Throne should go to the man with the strength to seize it. That would be Maegor, which is not entirely like a incorrect mentality, especially when the prophecy is that the realm must be united in order to defend it against the Long Night. That's the Song of Ice and Fire, right? So if they're sort of storing the most powerful, strong, once and future king characters in a weirwood sort of tomb as a once and future king, like how is this going to play out in the future, especially when it comes to Daenerys and her being sort of the princess that was promised, and the person who brings dragons, she awakens dragons, she brings them, she is the Targaryen to defend against the Long Night. So I don't know how it's all going to play out. There, at a certain point, like Daenerys has those visions where she's having flashbacks of like her ancestors, and she's seeing them with like the different jewels and that kind of thing, the tourmaline and jade and amethyst and this kind of thing. She sees her ancestors. So perhaps she is seeing like some of these spirits that are imbued in weirwood trees, for all we know, or some other sacred vessel for these powerful ancestors of hers. I'm just spitting here, but this is kind of like my ultimate like idea of what's happening, that in a sense, like Daemon's spirit or that Targaryen ferocity may reincarnate, and we see it like maybe that was Bloodraven, maybe it's Rhaegar, and then maybe it's Daenerys. These various Targaryens throughout history who sort of embody that ideal Targaryen kingness, right? Usually the second sons, usually the rule breakers, those kind of, usually not the ones that are sitting on the Iron Throne. So, all right, tell me your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think. And we're still not even, Daemon pace, exactly. I mean, who knows? Like, where is she getting this? Like, where is she getting this? Who knows? And it's interesting. So after he drinks the paste, then he kind of like blacks out, and he wakes up and he's in the middle of having this meeting with Will and Blackwood. And which is great to see him. Welcome back, welcome back, grown-up Willem Blackwood. We know this guy is like a little badass, so enjoyed seeing him back. And I also kind of wish, not like no shade to this guy, but like, wouldn't it have been funny if like this little Willem Blackwood that Rhaenyra had like been like, oh, he's just a boy. Da, da, da. What if he turned out to be like, they should have cast like a super huge, like sexy dude, just as like a just for S&Gs. It would be fun. No shade at the guy who played Willem Blackwood. You know what? I'm about the short kings. Okay. All right. So, yeah, here we go. Okay. So, Targaryen blood and seed more than Daemon himself. Yeah, the seed is Daemon? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. To the most powerful were Alexander's last words with regards to whom should inherit his empire as well. Yeah. And that's kind of very like a Roman Greek mindset, because they weren't always naming their own children. Like they would adopt children, to name them their heirs. So it's interesting. The seed is strong. The seed Rivers. Not half bad once you get to know me. All right. So let's see here. Whoops, wrong notes. Okay. Let me just get caught up here. Oh, one thing I did want to point out. So, okay. So Alys, so going back to the weirwood paste, again, she's just licking it off of her fingers. So clearly her like third eye gifts are fully awake. She's just like, snacking on mushrooms like she lives in Alaska or something, right? So she's just licking her fingers, and I just loved that. I was just like, that is such a perfect touch. It's just excellent. I just love her. She's so funny. She says that she is a barn owl and she's cursed to live in human form. So let's talk about this, because this actually is a myth. So there is the myth called of a goddess called Blodeuwedd, and she is kind of a springtime goddess, but Blodeuwedd means flower face in Welsh. And she was made of flowers by the magicians Math and Gwydion, who are pretty central like characters, like a Merlin type. Like Math and Gwydion are both actually sort of Merlin-esque type characters, right? So the Mabinogi is this ancient book of like Celtic mythology and sort of their rules and ways of life and their history and that kind of thing. And anyway, so Math and Gwydion, they create Blodeuwedd to marry her to like the king, right? And he has like a, what do they call it? A tingid in Welsh, but I think that's like a gaias in Irish. But anyways, by his mother, so that he would never take a human wife. So to counteract the curse, the magicians take the flowers of the oak, the flowers of the broom, the flowers of meadowsweet, and from those they conjured up the fairest and most beautiful maiden anyone had seen. And they baptized her in a way that they did at that time and named her Blodeuwedd. But Blodeuwedd, she doesn't really love her husband, the king. He's kind of like, I think he's kind of a pussy. And so anyway, sorry, I know that's not like PC, but anyways, he's just like not that cool. And so anyway, she cheats on him with this other guy. Granted, like the other thing about her is she can't speak at all. Like she's just this beautiful figure, but she can't speak. And so she's just kind of sits there like hating life basically. And then I think this other guy, Granu, he like liked her a lot. He wanted to hear what she had to say. So they have this affair. They conspired to kill her husband. And Bloodwyth tricks Hlw into revealing how he may be killed, which is part of the curse by his mother, Arianrod, who is a goddess herself. So since he cannot be killed during the day or night, nor indoors nor outdoors, neither riding nor walking, not clothed, not naked, nor by any weapon lawfully made, he reveals to her that he can only be killed at dusk, wrapped in a net, with one foot on a bath and one on a black goat, by a riverbank and by a spear forged for a year during the hours when everyone is at mass. With this information, she arranges his death. Like, literally, this is Celtic mythology for you, okay? Like, it's just like, what? Okay, all right. But the black goat, okay? She foresaw his death. She knows his death. There's a black goat involved. Okay, so struck by the spear, thrown by Granu's hand, Hlw transforms into an eagle and flies away. Gwydion tracks him down and finds him perched on a high oak tree. Through the singing of an anglin? I don't know what that is. Is that an eagle? Oh, no. Oh, it's a poem. Okay. Gwydion lures Hlw down from the oak tree and switches him back to his human form. Gwydion and Math nurse Hlw back to health before mustering Gwyneth and reclaiming his lands from Granu and Bloodwyth. Gwydion overtakes the fleeing Bloodwyth and turns her into an owl, the creature hated by all other birds, proclaiming, "You will not dare show your face ever again in the light of day ever again." And that will be because of enmity between you and all other birds. It will be in their nature to harass you and despise you wherever they find you, and you will not lose your name. That will always be Bloodwyth, flower face. The narrative adds, Bloodwyth means owl in the language of today, and it is because of that there is hostility between birds and owls, and the owl is still known as Bloodwyth. So if you kind of consider like how an owl looks, they kind of have that like popped out face, sort of like a flower face, right? And owls are kind of set apart from like other birds. So when Alys, in light of all the other Celtic mythology that's going on here, and then Alys says, I'm a barn owl cursed to live in human form, and we consider Bloodwyth, who is like basically just created to be of service to like be a wife to this man that she kind of despises and doesn't love, and when she refuses to do that, she's cursed and she's turned into an owl, or so maybe there's something here going on with Alys and her curse and the curse of Harrenhal and who she is in general. And granted, Celtic mythology, it's not word for word applied in the story, but there's something to it. Like it rhymes. The overtones are there. So exactly, barn owls have a flower face. Black goat and wolfhounds may also be foreshadowing of Bargo Hoat, the Cleganes who will rule Harrenhal eventually as well. Yes. But like they only like the black goat only rules over Harrenhal. I think I saw that. I think did Gray Area say that maybe? I don't know how I feel about that, because it was like he only was there for like a very short period of time. So I don't know how relevant that really is. I think the black goat is more indicative of death in itself, because the black goat in particular, like, have you guys seen the movie The Witch? By, Robert Eggers directed it. It's got Anya Taylor-Joy and I can't remember his name offhand, but the father in The Witch also plays the Green Knight in The Green Knight. So anyways, the synchronicities are real. Okay, so but in The Witch, there is a black goat, Black Phillip, who is he is Satan, like he's Satan embodied, who gets what's her name? Can't remember her name, starts with a T, but anyways, he gets Thomason to sign his book, right? His black book. And then she is given the powers of witchcraft. Like she becomes a witch after she signs Black Phillip's book. Okay? What's happening? We're figuring these things out here. Okay? So maybe we have a bit of the witch going on, which, okay. Okay. Okay, let me cook. I don't know. Okay, it's there. The things are there. But anyways, that's Black Phillip. He's come back. Hey, what's up? It's nice to see you. So I just think, a black goat is the embodiment of death, like symbolically. It's associated with Satan. It's associated with death. Daemon's having his death being predicted in this place. So I'm sure when he sees a black goat, he's like, oh, that's a bad omen kind of thing. It's just like a nice little icing on the cake. But then we also have the myth of Bloodwith, who is an owl, a goddess turned into an owl. And she finds out this, this prophecy of her husband's death, and a black goat is involved. There's a lot of things swirling around in this cauldron, y'all. Yes, exactly. Black Phillip, what up? I should have got a screenshot of you. I did think you guys have to see this. I don't know if you guys watch hold on, let me get to my notes. Do you guys watch the show Smiling Friends? Because all I could think of with Daemon and Alys was this, get out of my head, man. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyways, I hope you guys get that joke. Otherwise, I'm just really amusing myself. So, okay. I'm probably going to do exactly like I did with my last week's video, where I recorded it and then I'll, kind of edit it out and then put up a video for you guys with kind of the highlights of it all. So I'm not going to really go through and put a bunch of pictures up here in this live stream just because it's distracting and time consuming. Did anyone get that? Did anyone get out of my head? Or am I just like amuse myself way too much? Anyways, okay. Yeah, the guy that played Black Phillip was hot. Okay, I will sign your book, Satan. Sorry. No, but seriously. Okay. All right. And also, let's say a Bible quote to cleanse the palate. Okay. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. Interesting. Indeed. I think I'd rather be a goat, to be perfectly honest, than a sheep. Just saying. Although I know, we are a flock, right? The good ones of us. Okay, so Daemon knows that she is the only valuable person in all of Harrenhal as well. All the rest are just a bunch of lick-spittles and yes men. That's not exactly a kid's cartoon, but I do watch it with them. Okay. All right. So yes, and I agree. She is very valuable. It's interesting. I do wonder about the relationship between Alys and Sir Simon. Sir Simon is an interesting character. He seems super cool. I don't, is there more behind it? I do wonder if he also has kind of some of the green seer abilities, or, some of the same abilities that Alys has, or Larys, this sort of strong magic, right? Which is associated with the green men and with the Isle of Faces. In my opinion, that's what I kind of like interwoven all of this, right? And Sir Simon seems like a pretty like go with the flow kind of guy. He's like, yeah, whatever, like, sure, yeah, we'll give you the castle. Harrenhal is yours, Daemon. Like, he just doesn't seem like he's trying to go out of his way to create a bunch of trouble or fight or anything of that nature, which is interesting. And there's something to that with the Strongs in general. They're all kind of go with the flow, and life and death, it's all kind of, it's like, whatever, if I die, I die kind of thing. So I don't know. it's interesting. I don't know what to say about Sir Simon. I like his purple robes. I think that's interesting. Okay, because Alys also is associated with purple, which leads me to believe that those two do have an alliance going on. I don't think it's just happenstance that they both are wearing a lot of purple being kind of like this mythical color. This like amethyst is associated with your crown chakra, so your ability, you know, your prophetic abilities and that kind of thing, your third eye, right? So I feel like that's kind of what has to do with the purple. And they even talk about that in the after the episode thing, that they're giving Alys and sort of Harrenhal is like a purple vibe, right? That's the color they're associating. But purple is not associated with how strong, like in their sigil, like their sigil has the green hand on a white field with three streams leading out of it, a red, a green, and a blue. Okay, and that's very symbolic in and of itself because they updated that sigil for House of the Dragon. And it's very telling because it does have the green hand in it, which is clearly connected to the Isle of Faces and the Sacred Order of Green Men who reside there. This has turned into an Alys Rivers stream, FYI. Yes, and also, yes, exactly, Carl. So the mystery religions of Greece and Rome all use the sacred purple as drug for their ceremonies, and that's the color of royalty. That's the color that they wore. So the emperors wore purple, and no one else was really permitted to wear purple except for royalty, except for the high priestesses, in particular of Eleusis. So the Eleusinian mysteries, the high priestess at that would wear purple robes, and she was permitted to wear purple even in the presence of the emperor, but no one else was permitted to wear purple in front of him. Another, like, is this Alys, like, because the Eleusinian mysteries are all about the it's all about acceptance of the afterlife. It's all about the reincarnation cycle. We've talked about this so many times. If you're here from the Yellow Jackets, you know, my Yellow Jackets friends, like the Eleusinian mysteries is all about sort of making your peace with death, making your peace like with Hades, and it's all about the reincarnation cycle, the life, death, rebirth, Demeter, Persephone, Hades. That trinity in and of itself, like, is the spring goddess, the god of death, and like the harvest goddess, right? So it's a full circle dynamic with those. So I love that you mentioned that, Carl, because now we're thinking about why was the purple? Why did they choose purple? Well, now we have another connection, the Eleusinian mysteries. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love everything about Harrenhal. Like, I love everything about it. They sucked down some coffee down the wrong tube. Okay. Hey, Moni's here. Hey, girl. What's up? Good to see you. Okay, so like a ghost of high heart roaming the castle, bandying about. Wait, where'd it go? Pearls of wisdom. Exactly. Alys Rivers is the one true stream. Exactly. The stream is strong. Or Rivers. Okay. Oh, well, you know, there is so much more to it. But yes, and Demeter gets a bad rap, but Hades does also. Persephone just wanted to pick some flowers. Exactly. But no, there really is a life, death, rebirth symbolism to them, because Hades only has Persephone for a third of the year during the winter months, and then she returns to the surface. So when we consider it, she does go through the life through the summer, through the green cycles, death at the harvest, you know, the dawn of winter, I guess we might call it. So when winter comes, and then she's in the underworld during the winter months, and then she returns again. So her whole story is about the life, death, rebirth cycle. Hades serves a purpose. Demeter serves a purpose. Persephone serves a purpose. She's the most active force in that. So, yeah, I love it. Exactly. Okay. A very spiritual color and a rare dye. All right, guys. So, and you know, what's really interesting too, like Alys, she and Helena do have a lot of parallels in a sense because, well, first of all, like they look very similar to each other, which is, I guess, another nod to the Daemon Aemond like sort of twinning that they have going on. But the same goes with Alys and Helena. They are two women who look very similar physically. And then Alys in this episode, she is wearing her weirwood sort of apron. It's got weirwood leaves embroidered on it. In season 1, what episode? I want to say it was I think it's episode 8 where she's wearing that gold dress, Helena, and it has some embroidery on it, and it's in red thread. It's all kind of like winding vines and leaves and that kind of thing. And so I posted a picture of it on Twitter on the two of them. I said they're both wearing weirwood embroidered into their clothing. And it just shows a further parallel with these guys, or with these girls, these women, that they both sort of have a similar role in this story, in these men's lives. Because if we look at it, like Alys is to Daemon what Helena is to Aemond. And we think about Aemond and Helena, Helamond, if you're a Helamond subscriber, they do have a very close personal relationship that's much different than what Helena has with Aegon. And we saw it a lot in their childhood. But also Helena just feels much more safe around Aemond. Like she kind of seeks him out for safety or for protection. But let's think about this. In season 1, she says to her mother, he'll have to close an eye. Okay, he'll have to close an eye in order to gain a dragon. Well, what is Alys doing when she is giving Daemon this weirwood paste? You'll have to open an eye. You'll have to open your eye. Okay, so it's exactly like the same relationship. Okay, so Alys is to Daemon what Helena is to Aemond. They're sort of empathic, prophetic woman who sees them on a different levels, on a more, I don't know, spiritual level in a sense, I guess you might say. Okay, are you guys picking up what I'm putting down here? We know Helena is a dreamer, so we might then look at Alys also as a dreamer, or at least, you know, somebody who has prophetic abilities, maybe not in the same sense as like a Targaryen dreamer that we are, you know, familiar with, but as a weirwood dreamer, as a green dreamer. Okay. Got it? Are we here? Are we swimming in the green sea together? Yeah, lose your second eye to open your third, but then also losing an eye is equated with losing the right to kingship. So again, that's why when Daemon when he sees himself as Aemond without the eye, is also while he's struggling with his inner wounding of losing his right to kingship, right? So these are equated woundings, equated women, equated abilities, like they're just on the same trajectory, right? It's beautiful. Chef's kiss. Okay. Odin does the same thing, exactly. And there are many like mythological, and I'm going to make a video about this. I'm in the middle of it. It's being edited right now. I'm kind of glad I procrastinated because there was so much good stuff in this episode that I definitely want to like use screenshots and that kind of thing for it. But yeah, that is definitely a heavy mythological trope is losing an eye to gain something greater. So Odin, he like hung himself from a tree and lost an eye in order to learn like the great like knowledge and also the runes, like to learn rune system or whatever. I'm saying this terribly, but yeah, so it's equated like losing an eye to gain something greater. So, okay. Thank you, Moni. You're picking up what I'm putting down. I'm not always the most eloquent, but like it's coming out however it comes out. Okay. Excuse me. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Definitely. Very true. Is that from Dune? It just seems like it. I love this conversation we're having. This like got way deeper than I was planning, but I love it all. All right. So, you know, and also just one more thing before we move on from this subject. Ryan Condal said after the episode thing, he said that when Daemon sees Aemond, like he's having to confront his, you know, past woundings, his past traumas and this kind of thing. When he sees Aemond, who turns around and it's himself, Ryan Condal said something to the effect of Daemon had a hand in Aemond's creation. And I think that's just like a really odd thing. Like, I think that's like an odd thing to say, or I don't know. Like, they did not, like, if anything, Aemond idolized Daemon and was like kind of obsessed with him, or sort of like recreating that like image or something of that nature. But I don't know. I don't feel like Daemon should feel personally responsible for Aemond becoming the person that he's become. That was not Daemon's that was not Daemon's fault. And Daemon had already been so pushed out of the family at that point and sort of rejected. Like, how could he take accountability for Aemond becoming the person that he's become? If like, I was thinking of what does Eminem say? He's like, well, I probably can't repeat what he says, but anyway, something to the effect of like, I just said it. I didn't know you'd do it or not. We won't say the rest of it, but but yeah. So like, Daemon's just living his life, and he can't help it if he is like that cool that Aemond was like, whoa, like I want to be like that kind of thing. Like, but that's not his own personal responsibility. So I just thought that was worth commenting on. I don't know if you guys had other thoughts about that, but not gonna lie, seeing Daemon with an eye patch was a bit goofy. Yeah, you know, it was a little I laughed. I actually did laugh out loud. How much weirwood could a weirwood chuck if a small folk could chuck weirwood? Okay. We have Aemon Targaryen at home. Aemon Targaryen at home. Puffy looking Daemon with an eye patch. All right. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. All the things happening at Harrenhal. So, all right. I think that's about it. So let's move on. We'll talk about what happens on Dragonstone. Well, okay. So Baela and Jace are just kind of like running the show. They're holding down Dragonstone while Rhaenyra is gone on her little secret SEPTA mission. So Jace is pretty unhappy that she has left and didn't tell him what's going on. And again, this, you know, thankfully later in the episode, they do get to the point where Rhaenyra finally tells him the prophecy, tells him the Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm like, you know, yeah, she should have told him sooner. Like, he has gone to Winterfell and back on a dragon, super like dangerous. Let's be real. Like, and you kind of get the feeling more and more, like, especially in the battle scene at Rook's Rest, when you really kind of think about it for a minute, like, these people are flying hundreds of feet in the air on an animal, on a beast, anything could happen. Anything could go wrong. I'm surprised we don't hear more often about stories about some random Targaryen or random, whoever that has fallen, actually just fallen from their dragon. Like, oh, he didn't chain in, he fell. I don't know. We don't hear about that, but it is interesting. So she hasn't told him the prophecy. She finally does tell him later, thankfully, but you could see why he would be very unhappy that his mom's just out running around. She's not only his mom, but she's also a queen, and her very life is sort of crucial to everything that's happening in all of theirs. And their own personal safety. Like if Rhaenyra dies and everything ends, then, probably the Greens would put all of these people to the sword. So, she should take that a little more seriously. So Baela is reporting on Criston Cole. She has been watching him. He is using the cover of darkness to his advantage. He's using the tree line to his advantage. So he's traveling through the tree line so the dragons can't track them as easily. This is definitely a nod, we talked about this last week, to the Vale Perilous in Arthurian legend, which is an enchanted forest. Morgan Le Fay cursed a forest so that that she would basically trap men there for her own personal seed supply, we'll call it. And the only person who was able to escape the Vale Perilous was Lancelot, because he was pure of heart in his love for Guinevere. And that was the purpose of the Vale Perilous. Morgan Le Fay had her heart broken by her former betrothed. And so as revenge, she basically cursed this forest so that no man would ever be able to leave there unless he was pure of heart. And of course, Lancelot was that guy. And of course, Criston Cole is Lancelot. So, and he definitely was in his Lancelot vibe this episode. We'll get into it, but he definitely was in his Lancelot berserker mode. Okay. And he has that. And we're going to talk about that because that's one of my favorite things. So, but anyway, so all the lords on Rhaenyra's council are pressing her to send a dragon out to go and fight. And that's exactly what Cole wants. That's why he's going to Rook's Rest. He's trying to lure out a dragon. He's trying to get them to come and fight because they have sort of this secret subterfuge. He and Aemond have a plan that Vhagar is going to lay in wait until they lure out a dragon and then, unleash the big guns and take out one of the Black's more powerful weapons there. So, Rhaenyra returns in the middle of the council. Oh, and I did love Corlys coming in the middle of it. Finally, he came out the cut and was just like, "What is happening in this council? You guys are just you guys just want violence. You're just out here grasping." And I'm so sorry. I'm gonna close my window. I don't know if you guys can hear my neighbor's dog barking, but I can. It's driving me nuts. So, okay, sorry. Can't hear myself think. Okay, so yeah, Corlys comes in, he lays it down. He's like, you guys need to shape up. You guys sound like a bunch of losers, and we have to play this smart. It's dangerous. And then Rhaenyra kind of comes in the middle of it, and she's like, she's basically had to change her heart. She went to King's Landing. She needed to know that there was no alternative, that Alicent that there was no alternative, that she couldn't reason with her childhood friend, and that they couldn't come up with something that was safer, so that they're not having to unleash the dragons, because this is extremely dangerous and powerful. And this, we do see the difference between the Blacks and the Greens, and their reverence, their respect for the dragons which they wield, because the Greens, they just don't have that same history, the same knowledge that the Blacks do. And especially Daemon, who in particular, he's the foremost person with the knowledge, the ancient Valyrian knowledge. He's studied the ancient texts, and even it's rumored that he and Laena had flown to Old Valyria, the Smoking Ruins, to like search for, the secrets of their ancestors and that kind of thing. And so, and Daemon also, we should always remember this, that Laena, her former dragon, her dragon when she was alive was Vhagar. So Daemon already has a relationship with Vhagar. As I always say, mom's dog is not going to forget dad, even if mom died. Okay. So this is going to come into play later. Like Daemon will have influence over Vhagar. I'm just saying, I'm calling it now. Take it or leave it. Biscuits. Okay, so Rhaenyra, she now knows there's no alternative to the war, to fighting, to unleashing the dragons, and so she's finally like, all right, the people have seen, they're starting to think that I'm weak because I have not just unleashed the dragons and gone straight to war, but we're gonna have to do that now. We're at the point. And she offers to go herself, which is very brave, and kudos to her for offering that. But obviously she is the most important person. And it's funny, like she and Aemond are both like, I'll go, I'll do it. Da, da, da. They have very different motivations behind their reasonings as to why they want to be the ones to go out and fight. But it's, interesting to see that both of them are like gung-ho, like, yeah, I will go and fight for my claim. So there's something to that. And then Jace says, no, you can't go. I'll go. And she says, no, you're not going. But finally, Rhaenys realizes that she's going to have to be the one to go. She has the most experience. She has, I think Meleys is battle hardened. Like, I believe, why do I think Alyssa may have ridden her into battle? I'm not certain about that. But Alyssa is Daemon and Viserys's mother, and she was Meleys's rider before Rhaenys. Meleys, she knows what it means to go to war. She's obviously a fierce dragon. She's said to be a super fast dragon, and I love this moment beforehand, before she leaves with her, that she sort of has this like bonding moment where she basically communicates. She says, we're going into battle, it's time to go to war, and she takes it very seriously. You can tell, like, she's really concentrated. She's getting in the zone for it, versus when we see like Aegon sort of getting in the zone for his fight. He's drunk, he's kind of giggling with Sunfire. It's a much different energy. And there was this great quote I wanted to share with you guys from an interview. I'm not exactly sure. Let's see. Anyways, I don't know what the source is, but an interviewer asked Eve Best, who played Rhaenys. So she says, during the fight itself, Aegon and Aemond both say Dracarys, but Rhaenys tells Meleys to attack, which is an interesting distinction. They're going for maximum firepower, while attack isn't as violent of a command. And Eve Best says, that's well spotted, because exactly right. They're just like boys with guns. They want to maximize the amount of carnage. And there's something very, I don't want to generalize, but it's very male. Whereas she's very specifically going for the dragon. Let's take out the weaponry and don't burn everybody else randomly. There's a gritted teethness about it, because these guys are her nephews, however appallingly bad they've behaved and are behaving, and however dangerous they are. Aemond is responsible for Lucerys's death. At the same time, they're her family too. There was a lot of reluctance and knowledge that they're effectively pushing the red button. The responsibility of that is so huge that it has to be a kamikaze mission, because how can one live with it? And that sort of samurai thing of when she comes back in, she could have escaped, and she turns around. To me, that's pure whatever she is. Arthurian knight, Lancelot, samurai. It's the noble warrior thinking, no, I'm not just going to save myself, I'm going to finish this. And I loved that so much, because that's what we see Rhaenys do. You know, she's in a position where she could leave. Like the first time I wasn't even sure. I was like, oh, it's over. Like she must have been killed. And then she comes out the cut. She's dirty. She's, got ash on her. And then she turns around and she goes back for more. And then she does it again. And it's just like, girl, like, yeah, exactly. A kamikaze mission. She was ready to die. And when you really think about Rhaenys as a character, her daughter has died. Her son, she believes her son has died. Her grandson has died. And she definitely feels on a certain level responsible for Lucerys's death, because just as Daemon pointed out to her, if she had burned the grains at Aegon's coronation when she had the chance, then Luke would still be alive. Plain and simple. And no matter what the circumstances around their parentage, Lucerys was very beloved. He was the most beloved of, all those children. He was so sweet, gentle, kind, intelligent, and Corlys and Rhaenys loved him very much, despite the fact that he was not necessarily their natural grandson. He was still blood related to Rhaenys as, an extension of the Targaryen family. So, she does feel a sense of responsibility, and I'm sure that eats away at her. I'm sure that it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry around. And she's doing everything that she can to serve the queen. Maybe that's to make up for it because she feels this level of guilt. Maybe it's because she truly does believe in Rhaenyra's claim. Maybe it's because she is, in a sense, sort of fighting for her own claim that she was, that was taken from her by Jaehaerys when they named Viserys as king. There's a lot to Rhaenys's psyche and to her mental state as to why she does any of the things that she's been doing in season 2. She's been a strong backbone, a pillar for Rhaenyra in these in these episodes as she's trying to formulate. She's been a sort of a backbone of, I guess, peace or just sort of resistance to just caving in and sending the dragons and fighting and just giving into this war, hungry, like the men around her want her to send the dragons. They want to fight and all of this. They want to see, whoa, dragons fighting. But then when we get to Rook's Rest, we realize that like dragons fighting is absolutely disruptive and dangerous, and men become minuscule, microscopic, like they're just toy soldiers in the real thick of the things. Like in the thick of a dragon battle, you could see like they're getting stepped on, they're getting kicked aside, they're getting burned, they're getting turned to ash and bone. Like it's just, they're devastating weapons, the dragons are. And so that having that sort of pillar of that strength for Rhaenyra to rely upon in Rhaenys was very, very important to her. But now that the tides have turned and now we're turning to violence, like Rhaenys may have felt that, she's served all that she can do. She's done everything that she can. She's given the best advice that she can. And her last and final gift can be, I will give my life to, fight for your cause. But she's maybe just ran out of that fight, and she was willing to give up her last breath for Rhaenyra in hopes of sort of avenging Lucerys and just all, everything that's happened in her whole life. It's just been sort of a snowball rolling towards this massive culminating event. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of how I feel. We also had this great moment where she returns to Driftmark. She sees Alan of Hull, and I mean, you look at Alan next to Corlys, it's like, you are the father. I love Abu Bakar Salim, who plays Alan of Hull. He played father in Raised by Wolves. He is so near and dear to my heart. I just love him to death. And I love seeing him play this role. And then we see Rhaenys, and she comes face to face with him. She says, "You're the man who pulled my husband from the sea. You saved his life. He owes you his life." And she recognizes him immediately. She's like, I never heard you were so comely, which I just love that. And she's like, "Your mother must have been so beautiful." And such a great remark. And then, of course, Corlys is like, "Rhaenys," and he like steps in. I love the cutoff. He like steps in and like steps in between them, and he turns out and he's like, "Are you done with your chores?" Like, or whatever, It's so like father and son, because what's interesting about Alan is he really is like a perfect protege for Corlys. Like, he really is a very, very similar person. He knows the ships. He and his brother, they've been raised as as shipwrights, right? Their mother was a shipwright. Her name is Marilda. And I don't think we're going to end up seeing her, because obviously Adam has taken the role as the shipwright of this area. So Alan is a sailor and a warrior and that kind of thing. They've clearly, like, they know Corlys, but it's sort of like don't say the obvious kind of thing going on between them. So, but Rhaenys, to her credit, she says, and this has been so interesting because throughout this whole season, it's been her recommending, Baela should receive Driftmark, Rhaena should receive Driftmark, and now she's even saying Alan should be rewarded and recognized for his for saving Corlys's life, saving his lord's life. And so it's really beautiful in a sense. I mean, it's so unrealistic, but it is really beautiful that Rhaenys is so dedicated. She has fully embodied being a Velaryon. She is Lady Velaryon. So she loves Rhaenyra. She would die for her. She loves the Targaryens, but she was passed over. She was passed over for the crown. Not, I believe, like more than once. Like, she was passed over. And so she carries, she kind of had to leave that Targaryen identity behind her. And she's still a Valyrian. She's married to a Velaryon. But I think she really embodied that Velaryon identity. Like, I think she really took it on. She became Lady Velaryon versus being Rhaenys Targaryen, in a sense. And so she cares more about the legacy, Corlys's legacy, and the legacy of House Velaryon than she really does about, like, appeasing appeasing Rhaenyra for her illegitimate children. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though Baela and Rhaena were betrothed to the boys, the house was still, Velaryon was still passing to her, her granddaughters. But now that that's not so sure because Lucerys' death and there's a war happening and this and that, she's really trying to secure the Velaryon name and, Driftmark itself to pass to a true Velaryon. And she sees that Alan is that, and that he's dedicated enough to Corlys that he would save his life and not be, like, proud about it or trying to, like, gain a bunch of accolades or anything like that. She sees that he's, like, a good, decent person and that he should be rewarded and that he's clearly a Velaryon versus, the strong boys. And so as much as she loves them, she wants it to stay in the Velaryon family. She doesn't want the Targaryens to take over the Velaryon name. So, yeah, where are the Baratheon aspects of Rhaenys? I am disappointed we didn't get the half black, half blonde hair. Let's be real. That would have been super cool. Okay, picking up on one of the most important themes in Germ canon, perception and how people view themselves and how their view shapes the world so much. Well, thank you. I try. Regardless of truth. Exactly. Well, history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names or whatever. But, you know, like, I think Rhaenys is of the opposite mindset of that, because there is, you know, as a Targaryen, I guess she has a different level of perception on that, right? You know, because clearly there's something magically, you know, attached to the Targaryen bloodline. They have these connections to dragons. They are able to fly dragons. And so she does realize that history may not, you know, it may just remember names, but blood is also important, especially if you're sort of carrying the legacy, the Valyrian legacy under, you know, your wing by your name, right? So, okay. All right. So let me just check my notes here. Okay, so we'll get into the Rook's Rest stuff. So Kristen Cole, you know, he's taken down Duskendale, Rosby, Darkland, which I think Darklands are from Duskendale. Okay, so he's heading to Rook's Rest. He's got about 14 to 1,500 men. He has been picking up men as he's gone. And I do want to shout out to Lord Darkland, played by Stephen Pacey, who was the narrator for the First Law book series by Joe Abercrombie. If you guys have not read those books, they are excellent. Or read Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, but excellent series, excellent writer. George R. R. Martin is a big fan. Stephen Pacey, awesome. I love to see him, and I love to hear him like talking crap to Kristen Cole, basically just telling him like, where's the honor? Like, where is honor? You know, what is honor to you? Because you are sullying the white cloak. So if you're here in service of honor, like, move on. Okay, so they head to Rook's Rest. He's got a big plan. He wants to lure out the dragon. That's kind of just the whole thing. And they take the bait. That's the thing. The blacks, they definitely take the bait. It's like, you guys should have been a little bit, you know, smarter about that. It's clear. Like, are you really going to let Cole outsmart you? Like, give me a break. Okay, so the battle itself, you know, again, like, we can see how minuscule it makes men, it makes soldiers. Like, you know, when the dragons come out, when the dragons dance, like, run. And that was interesting too. We see both sides, like, they're fighting with each other, there's arrows flying, they're battling and all of this. And then as soon as the dragons appear in the sky, they're like, the men shout dragons, and they all scatter. Like, both sides, they just scatter, because dragons are terrifying, and they know that once they come out, like, it's over. Like, it's dangerous. You need to get out of the way. And I found it really interesting, if you think about going back to like Game of Thrones, when we had the Field of Fire 2.0 battle, which was the Dothraki and Daenerys versus like the Westerland men, you know, there was a much different reaction from the soldiers at Rook's Rest versus the soldiers in the Field of Fire 2.0. Those soldiers in Game of Thrones, they're just watching. They haven't seen a dragon. They have never fought a dragon. The dragons are like this mythical idea. They're extinct. They're no longer around. And so this is the first time many of them have seen them or have any idea of like their power or anything. And so they all kind of stood there and didn't like do anything. So I just thought that was a really unique detail that they added, because these men are familiar with dragons. They are familiar with their power, or just the idea of their existence and how dangerous that could actually be. So I enjoyed that. It was just like a little detail that I caught, whether intentional or not, but it was good. I did find that the Rook's Rest battle I was way more stressed out. I was so stressed out. Like when Daenerys had her dragons and she's going to fight, it's a one woman army, right? She's not fighting against other dragons. So when we're watching her fight, it's always like, yeah, go Daenerys, like, yeah, you go, girl. But then when we're watching Rook's Rest and watching House of Dragons and they're fighting with each other, it's way different vibe. It's way more terrifying. It's way more serious. It's more detrimental to everyone and everything. And it's just such a different vibe than Game of Thrones was, where she's just one woman and her dragons. So it was great. It was scary. It was terrifying. My heart was racing. It was emotional. It was a great battle. I really enjoyed it. Kristen Cole, he gets knocked unconscious. Very Lancelot of him. So he, after Aegon basically gets Dracarys by his own brother, Cole starts riding that way. He gets knocked unconscious. And he kind of misses out on the battle. And that's great. Like, he wakes up, we see this moment of him kind of waking up, and he doesn't know what's going on or what's happened or where anyone is, like who's winning. He sees the guy, like that soldier, kneeled there, and he goes up to him to go ask him, like, what's happened? We have to get to the king. And he realizes the guy is just pure ash that blows away in the wind because he's been torched by dragon flame. We saw kind of some similar stuff, I think, in the Field of Fire. They had kind of a similar sequence, but I do love that. It's such an excellent detail. And Cole doesn't even know. He's like completely shocked by this. He kind of missed the battle, and now Gawain is kind of leading the men. I love the dynamic between Kristen Cole and Gawain, because Gawain is like very logical, whereas Cole is extremely hot-headed. And this is very Arthurian. Okay, let's go back to some Arthurian. So Kristen Cole being Lancelot, Gawain Hightower being Gawain of, Gawain and the Green Knight, or Gawain, like just Sir Gawain. He is a cousin of Arthur's. He is one of his most loyal knights of the Round Table. He's obviously associated with the Green Knight. And there's this fantastic dynamic in Arthurian legend between these two, where Gawain is like, he's like one or the other of them. Like, one is portrayed as like a brutish, sort of violent, unpredictable knight, versus the other one being like the loyal, perfect kind of white knight. They change roles, like they change dynamics in various stories. So oftentimes when Gawain is being okay, let's see, how did I write this out? Okay, so Gawain, when Lancelot is being written as more heroic, Gawain is usually written as brutish. When Lancelot is written as more vain and overconfident, Gawain is portrayed as loyal and gallant. Both of them have womanizer aspects, and both of them have berserker aspects in various tales, meaning that they will literally go into berserker mode where they don't recognize anyone or anything around them. They will just kill. They just get like a battle frenzy over them. And I think we get that a lot more, obviously, from Kristen Cole, who he's bad-tempered. He's also kind of trying to prove something. And I think it's great that it's kind of going to him in this dynamic, because Lancelot, he's like a French infusion into Arthurian legend. And so oftentimes it's kind of pointed out, like, he's different. He's French, he's, or sometimes he's Irish in various tales, but he's sort of the outsider. He's one of Arthur's knights, but he's a little bit different. In the same way that Kristen Cole is constantly being pointed out that he is Dornish. Oh, I know you're not like Gawain loves to bust his chops about that. So I think there's kind of this great characterization that's being used in their dynamic with Gwaine and Criston Cole. They're both extremely loyal to their king. In fact, they're like the most loyal knights to the king, whether as like a way of proving their own, strength and gallantry, or just as like being true knights. Kind of depends. So, and of course, then we have like Gwaine and Criston Cole, like he's like, are you afraid? And Gwaine's like, no, I'm logical. Even worse, I'm logical. And you're freaking insane, dude. You're violent and insane and empowered and emboldened. And you took my father's hand of the king, like, ship. Come on. So it's interesting. I love the dynamic. I really love Gwaine. I love Freddie Fox portraying him. He's just doing an awesome job, and I can't wait to see more. Cannot wait to see more. I hope he sticks around for a long time. I mean, not forever, but so yeah. And then of course the dragons, they fight, they battle. What's happening to my chat here? Are we still going? What's happening? Anyway, so Aemond and Criston have this plan in mind. They already have it, going, what they're going to do. Aemond's sort of laying in wait, trying to lure in a dragon, but then they see overhead that Sunfire has come. Aegon has brought his own dragon. So he's thrown a wrench into the situation. They have to kind of plan around it. And I love, I've seen people like posting memes and stuff where they're like, oh yeah, that's like when that moment where Aegon is flying overhead and Aemon's down there with Vhagar and he's like, just calm down, not yet, kind of. They're like, this is the moment when Aemon decided that he was going to murder his brother. But yeah, so Aegon gets out there. He's got Sunfire. We only just barely got to see Sunfire, which is so devastating and like kind of ironic and perfect and humorous, because we're told that Sunfire is the most beautiful golden dragon that ever lived, the most beautiful of all the dragons. And this is, some more of that infamous high tower propaganda, right? Where, yes, everything about them is the greatest, and Sunfire is the most beautiful, the most beautiful dragon who ever lived. And yes, he was beautiful. This golden, like gorgeous, shining, shimmering dragon. I love the scene of like Aegon going to get him. He's drunk and he's kind of giggling. He sees his dragon. He's like, my baby, like it's his kitty cat. He's just such a dork. And we don't really get to see sort of who Sunfire is, the personality behind Sunfire. Unfortunately, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that, because I do think all the dragons kind of have a distinctive, subtle personality. We all kind of had characterizations around them, right? Like obviously Meleys, she's known for being super fast and super fierce. And, we have Caraxes, who is kind of like a goofy noodle boy, and we have, but also fierce. And then Vhagar, who's like old granny, who's just like a fierce old beast. And Syrax is kind of your spoiled, like beautiful fatty princess. Like that's just who these dragons are. But we really didn't get much from Sunfire. So I wish we would have gotten a little bit more personally. I don't know. But he is beautiful, beautiful dragon. Aegon wearing his armor of the conqueror, and he decided he was going to prove himself, and so he went out there. He fought with Meleys. I love the dragon fighting. Like it was so great because they're using like eagles, like eagle mating dances and that kind of thing. So then we see like or mating like whatever rituals or whatever, but it is sort of a dance where they lock feet, they spin, they kind of do that thing, this sort of like mating dance. And so they're using that imagery for the dragons. I loved it. They did such great detail about, you know, what's written in the book, where they're raking their guts, they rake their stomach and their torsos and this kind of thing with their feet. And that's what I think with Rhaenys, when she's telling Meleys to attack versus Dracarys, she's going to destroy. So Meleys is a fighter. Meleys is a brawler. Like, she's going to fight these dragons versus just torching them. And so we kind of see, again, going back to like the reverence that the greens have for their dragons versus the blacks for what they have for their dragons, and how connected that ancient dragon knowledge, that Targaryen, Valyrian knowledge of, you know, their dragon bond, it really shows the difference with Meleys and Rhaenys versus, you know, Aegon or Aemond and their dragons, who they just kind of use them as like, yeah, massive firepower nukes or whatever, versus Meleys trying to actually destroy like the cannon per se. I don't know what nukes shoot out of. I am not that person, but yeah, so it's really great. It was great battle scenes. I loved it a lot. It was super terrifying. I loved seeing, you know, them coming crashing to the ground and then like taking back off, and like they've, you know, destroyed, they've crushed soldiers and all of this kind of stuff. And that, I mean, imagine the chaos of being on the ground while these dragons are like fighting and coming down and launching back off. I mean, it was just, it was great. And then, so Meleys and Sunfire are fighting. Finally, Aegon notices Vhagar coming out of the cuts, and he says, thank the gods. He's so happy to see his brother. He's so happy. He's like, thank God, like my brother's finally here to save me, because Meleys is much larger than Sunfire. Sunfire's never been into battle. You know, he's smaller too, and Meleys is a super fast, like that's what she's known as, is like her speed. So when Aegon sees his brother, he's so joyous, he's so happy to see him. And then Aemon just straight up, Dracarys is his own brother, the king, and that's that. And so the devastating blow, I think, what did Tom Glencarney say after the episode? Hold on, I wrote it down because I thought it was great. Well, I don't know where I put it. Oh, when he's plummeting to the earth after being hit by a ball of fire, all of his fears of Aemon's betrayal come true. And that's it. Like, he's had this paranoia of this betrayal, or like his brother being better than him, which, you know, in many senses of the word, Aemond is better. He is smarter. He's more studious. He's more focused. He's a more fierce fighter. He flies the most fierce dragon in the world. Like, there are so many things that no one can compete with Aemond as to. But going back to what we've been talking about, he lost his eye. So when you lose an eye to gain a dragon, you also lose your right to kingship, because the eye is connected to the right of kingship in Egyptian mythology. So, and that's what this story really pulls from. The dynamic between Aemond and Daemon is, I mean, amongst the many, many myths, and actually I will shout this out, the Disputed Lands. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with her channel. She did an awesome video a couple weeks ago, I think like 2 weeks ago, about Sir Eric and Sir Arik, and it was all about the dynamic of the two brothers, which we see so much in the A Song of Ice and Fire world that George R. R. Martin writes about. But also in Arthurian legend and just many other cultural, you know, mythologies. I loved that video so much. It was one of the best videos I've ever seen. So I definitely recommend you guys watch that one, because it kind of touches on all this stuff. But yeah, but Aemond and Aegon, there's not gonna be much going back. And so then at the end of the episode, we see, like, after Criston has regained consciousness, he's trying to track down Aegon, and he finally finds Sunfire smoking away in the woods, and he's walking up and he sees Aemond standing with his sword drawn, and there's no one else around. There's only Sunfire and Aegon laying there on the ground, broken, burning, smoldering. And Aemond is approaching him with a drawn sword. So, like, what are we supposed to think here? Aemond, what are we supposed to think here, young man? I have some questions. Clearly he was gonna, try and be the first in line. He was gonna take what what he believes is his. And it's such an interesting dynamic because, isn't this just what Otto Hightower had been warning Viserys that Daemon was going to do for all these years? Oh, this is exactly who Daemon is. But look at all your meddling turned Aemond into your worst fears that you constantly were paranoid and warned Viserys of. And it was all in just grasping for power and to use the king as a puppet, just like they did. And that we really really became clear in this episode with Alicent, where she tells Aegon, we don't need anything from you. Do nothing and you'll be even better, because that means that we can rule through you as our puppet. And so that's what Otto had constantly warned Viserys that Daemon was going to do, but Daemon never actually did. Daemon just wanted to be close to his brother so that they could strengthen their family and he could serve his brother's throne, what he constantly refers to, his brother's throne. But he, so all those things that Otto was constantly warning and planting these seeds of dissent in Viserys's mind really ironically culminated into his grandson, who became that exact person. And there is a lot of irony to all of that. So that's about that. I think that's about all of the things that happened in this episode and then some. Before we wrap it up, if you guys have questions, definitely drop them in the chat and we'll kind of start getting it all wrapped up. But I'm so thankful that you all were here. I'm glad that we got this done and taken care of and had a really awesome conversation. Let me just check through the chat here. Northern Tommy, what's up? Okay, Mars Falcon, S. Edwards, thank you all for being here too. Brian Valco, let's see. So, yes, Amanda has been on a roll. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Her channel is probably like my very favorite A Song of Ice and Fire channel. Like, she's just excellent. I love her voice. She's very peaceful to listen to. And I hope that I can like be as good as her someday, because she's just so pleasant. And she's so smart, she like that video, I'm telling you, was like so eloquently written, because I've had these ideas. Like she's sometimes like we share the same ideas, I feel, but sometimes she's just so good at she's just an excellent writer and a beautiful voice. So anyways, okay, let's see. So let me get caught up here. So the camera angles on the battle scenes take my breath away. The shaky camera to emphasize Rhaenys' doubt and empathy before the fall. Yes, and that was so just a beautiful shot, so tragic, of when Meleys turns around and kind of looks at her, that final like look to her, and then they fall together from the sky. That was pretty upsetting. I definitely cried during this episode. It was just such a beautiful, tragic episode. I think they called it a Pyrrhic victory, which means that like the cost, the price of the war is just too great to like consider it actually a victory. Let's see. Early on, we had a beautiful shot of a crumbling castle in the foreground with an expansive Westeros sweeping across the distance. Yeah, I mean, everything was so beautiful in this episode. And the music too. Shout out to Ramin Djawadi. I know I did not pronounce that correctly, but I'm so happy that he's continuing to do the soundtrack for House of the Dragon. I love it so much. I've been jamming on it. There's some of the soundtrack is coming out like on YouTube, so I've been totally listening to it. I don't really listen to music. I listen to soundtracks. I don't know about you guys, but okay. Let's see. I would love to, maybe one of these days I can get her to do a live. I am so like, yeah. Well, anyways, I'll ask her. We would probably have a lot of fun talking Arthurian things. Okay. In the trailer, it might have been Rosby. I'm not sure. Okay, let's see. Whoops. Meleys and Vhagar are from Old Valyria and are around Aegon the Conqueror's time. Well, actually, so Vhagar was born, so she was around during Aegon the Conqueror's time, but she was not from Old Valyria. So Balerion was the last dragon from Old Valyria that made it to Westeros, right? Or that, like, the last living dragon. So they escaped with 5 dragons, Daenys the Dreamer and her family. They left Valyria with 5 dragons, but Balerion was the last from Old Valyria. And Daenys the Dreamer had claimed Balerion the very same night that she had her dream of the doom of Valyria. But he was just a small dragon at that time. He was no larger than a horse. I just made a video about, I've been making like dragon videos lately. So if you guys want to check those out, I made a Balerion video and a Dreamfire video. I get in short story, Aemon never marries, but they mention his engagement in the show to a Baratheon daughter, and I can't remember her name, but she was named, so wondering if that will be something. I think it's Floris Baratheon that he gets engaged to. I don't believe it ever becomes anything. I don't think it ever comes into fruition. Because he gets involved with Alys Rivers as of in the future. So I don't think he ever comes actually back to Storm's End at all. Okay. One day there will be a dragon named Fey Fire. That'd be cool. That would be cool. George R. R. Martin, if you are watching this, that would be cool. Yeah, they do have excellent CGI. It's beautiful. Everything, I mean, it's beautiful. All right. Okay, you guys. Well, if you have any last questions, drop them now. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping it up. And again, I will probably be editing this live stream just into, like, I don't know, just interesting parts, and maybe releasing those out on video or just as their own individual videos if you guys are interested in that. But I do appreciate all of you guys for being here tonight. This is a little bit different of live stream time, but hey, a lot of you guys are watching, so I do appreciate you all for being here. Maybe we should do Monday night instead of Monday morning. See, we're called the Monday Morning Murder Podcast, but Monday nights, I don't know. I kind of like it. If I can stay awake this late, I'm not usually an evening person. Okay, I think I'd rather go out in a blaze of glory than live like Aegon. Being a burn victim is no fun from what I've heard. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how severe it's going to be. I am interested. Although I guess in the trailer, it kind of looked like he was coming back in like a box and that no one could see him. Which in the books, they do say that, like, the only person who's permitted in to see him while he was healing was Alicent. So it must, it's probably so severe that like they don't want to reveal the wounds and, let people know how bad it is. But it's going to be really interesting going forward. I don't want to give away any spoilers quite yet, but I guarantee we're going to be talking about some really interesting things next week. I'm looking forward to it. We've talked about this a few times with like Aemond and his like just who he is and how he never has consequences for his actions. Like this kind of going back to Luke, like, does he have any consequences for killing his nephew? No, not really. And same with Criston Cole. Did he ever suffer any consequences for his own actions? No, like he killed Joffrey of Monmouth at Rhaenyra's wedding, at the princess's wedding. Like one would think that he does, deserve some level of punishment, but instead he was elevated. So we have this dynamic with Criston and with Aemond where they never receive consequences for their actions, and instead they are emboldened to continue their actions. And they are basically, in essence, both of them, they are creating monsters of individuals because they know no bounds, right? So this is, coming glaring into our face again when we think of Aemond and what he's just done to his own brother. Like, are there going to be consequences? Is there going to be any accountability? I don't know. It should be interesting to see because he, in a sense, is going to be rewarded for his actions. And we didn't even, what bothers me, and I've said this before, like we never got to see that scene where Aemond comes back after he's killed Lucerys, and in the books it's written as Otto says, "You only lost one eye. How could you be so blind?" kind of thing. But like, so I want to see, I want to see some of that. I need some consequences, please. Please, for Aemond, he needs consequences, whether that's Sylvie like spanking him at the brothel or whether it's Alicent like taking his sapphire right out of his eyeball hole. I don't know. But yeah. So, all right. Well, I think that about does it. Let me just check through these last. Oh, here we go. Monday Moonlight Murder Podcast. I like that. I do like that. The sun is actually down right now. It's been staying up rather late here in Alaska. So 10 p.m. So this is perfect. All right. Well, I will consider it going forward. It's not necessarily the most convenient for my lifestyle, but you know what? Like, hey, the feedback is important. I like to know these things. I like to know it. So, I thought her son's murder drove her mad, but does Helena seem any different? Good question. Yeah, because it is really it's really emphasized in the book that she suffers great mental distress after that happens. She stops bathing. She doesn't want to be around her other children because she feels this incredible guilt. And yet in the show, they're kind of like portraying it as she's such a beautiful, empathetic character that she feels almost guilt for mourning her child because the small folk have to lose their children far more often than highborn ladies, right? So her losing her own child can't, what right does she have to grieve or to complain? And it's just like, you are such a gentle, beautiful soul, and you are just stuck in this evil, dangerous, terrible game that, it's just, she does not deserve to be in the Game of Thrones, okay? All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for being here, and we will see you back next week. I will be getting out that Egyptian mythology video for you this week, I promise. I swear. It's about halfway done editing, so I just need to get it wrapped up and finished and then get it out for you guys. So keep an eye out for that this week, and of course, other things coming out to you, but I do appreciate you all being here. And I hope you all have an awesome evening. We'll see you later. Bye.